Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the DVC Show. Coming to you from the Bob Varley Studio in Orlando, Florida. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined at the table this week by my good friends, Mr. Paul Krieger.
Hey, everybody.
Mr. Derek DeBoer.
Hey, now.
And our producer, Mr. Corey Fiasconaro.
Welcome home.
And as always, just a reminder before we get started that this show, along with all of our DVC content, is brought to you by the World of DVC. That includes DVCResaleMarket.com, where you can buy a DVC resale contract, hence the name. Save a lot of money off buying it direct. DVCRentalStore.com, if you'd like to rent some DVC points, try before you buy, so to speak. And MoneraFinancial.com, the guys that make it very, very, very easy for you to finance that DVC resale contract. So if you like our content, please go ahead, support our sponsors. And while you're here watching us on YouTube, do me a favor, right down below, go ahead and hit that thumbs up for me. And hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Helps us out a lot with YouTube when you do that, so I would appreciate it. Now this week, we're going to talk about sleep around points. Now, not that. You have a dirty mind. You in particular. Giggles like an 8th grader.
This week on DVC Fan After Dark.
So what are we talking about when we talk about sleep around points? That's when, really, I guess the best way to describe it, you're buying for the points, not the resort. And you don't care if you have the 11-month window to book. You want the points. Now, I just did this with Aulani. Now, I do want to stay at Aulani. So but I like the fact that I have those points to use everywhere, as opposed to the restrictions on Riviera. Sleep around points are going to become a lot bigger thing the more resorts we have that have Riviera. But let me ask the question of you guys. Paul, I'm going to start with you. What's the best resort for sleep around points?
So I have to go back to Saratoga Springs every time that I think about sleep around points. And you know this because I actually called you sitting in a cabin for one night at Copper Creek. And literally, I don't know if I called you or texted you, but like I'm sitting on the picnic table bench that's outside of the cabin, and I'm frantically looking at what's the value of my current Animal Kingdom contract after owning it for 5 years, which is insane, by the way.
Right.
Like just how Animal Kingdom Lodge specifically, like what it's done in the past year or two, like you can get a pretty penny for that. But like thinking about, okay, if I how do I get cabin points? I want cabin points. Like,
I want cabin points.
I have splurged my entire year's worth on one night here, and I want more cabin points. And so, like, literally, it was like this game of like, okay, so if I sell, I get this, and then I can up to this many. We didn't end up doing it, but like that's where like our head was.
You're such a wuss.
I couldn't pull the trigger. I also know that my wife...
Your salesman didn't convince you to do it? Terrible. I gotta talk to that guy.
I also know that in the back of my mind is my wife going, I want DVC Disneyland Tower points. So I know that's on the horizon in 2 years.
The beauty of the world is you can have both.
Pete makes an excellent point.
You can have...
Is this an intervention for me, or is this...
Well, that was the reason I bought some direct points. Because I know I'm going to want to use them at the Disneyland Tower, and I know they're going to jack the price up on when Disneyland comes out.
Yeah.
The price is going to be astronomical. And, it's going to be hard to stay in it, but at least I have a shot.
Mm-hmm.
At least I have a shot with direct points. Although I'll probably end up buying a contract there.
But, the reason that I go back to Saratoga, too, is, we always say buy where you want to stay. And I think that trumps any discussion. But once you start to, don't judge a book by its cover with any Disney Vacation Club property.
Amen.
Because the more you experience these resorts, there is not a bad resort. Like, I will
Saratoga is so underrated.
So underrated. Now, I will put the asterisk right now on, and I know how you feel about this, Boulder Ridge right now, I would not stay there. Like, it's like going to, like, camp out in the middle of the...
It's like going to Sarajevo during the war.
Yeah. Let's refurbish that already, DVC.
Yeah, it's pretty run down.
Yeah.
It's very...
Yeah.
It's very Friday the 13th camp.
We're gonna get a lot of hate mail.
I love
from
look.
Boulder Ridge
I own a lot of points at Boulder Ridge.
Yeah,
I own a lot of points at Boulder Ridge.
You do?
it's been neglected.
I love Boulder Ridge, but it has been neglected. It has been neglected.
Especially when you compare it to Copper Creek.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
please.
Oh, my God.
You can't even talk about the two in the same sentence.
No.
Yeah.
But I love Boulder Ridge. I love the idea of Boulder Ridge. It's the execution and its current state that's the problem. And DVC should be absolutely effing ashamed of themselves for allowing it to be in the state that it's in. Those rooms are disgusting. They're not bad. They're disgusting.
Our Boulder contracts are flying off the shelf right now.
Well, I got to say what I got to say.
I walked down when we stayed there earlier last year. I walked down the hallway and I was like, I'm in The Shining. I am in The Shining.
Were you all the way down the hallway? Because I had one.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
2 years ago. I was all the way down the hallway with like the world's worst view. It was all the way down at the end of the hallway, and it's a trek, right? To get
Was it at the end of the hallway?
Yes, it was the end of the hallway.
But anyhow, like coming back to our point, like that's why I think Saratoga has been underrated for so many years. Is that people they judge it by its cover? They're like, I don't know about this. It's not near any park.
It doesn't have the same pop as a lot of other resorts, and so it gets dismissed.
Yep.
It gets dismissed.
Well, it completely got a rebirth with Disney Springs. I mean, completely got a rebirth. Because we used to sell, Saratoga Springs, and it would be like, oh, I guess I'll go there, or I guess I'll buy there. I guess, you could walk to, downtown Disney or whatnot.
Is this even Disney World?
See, but when people, I hear it all the time, once people stay there, all of a sudden, it's not the resort of last resort, as I called it at one point. It's not that anymore.
Yep.
And let's talk about those tree houses.
Oh, yeah. And the refurb with the rooms.
The new rooms are stunning.
Stunning.
Incredible value, too. If you go back and look at some of the room tours we did for the DVC rooms, for the Grand Villa at Saratoga and for the tree houses, it's incredible value for points. But not to mention, I just did a tier list over on the Diz Unplugged channel about a week ago. And I said Saratoga Springs was probably the most underrated resort of all time when it comes to amenities. You got to consider, does its table service restaurant kind of suck? Sure. But you have access to Disney Springs. It has a spa.
It has a spa.
Some really cool pools.
Its food and beverage, its entire food and beverage operation leaves a great deal to be desired. But that is fixable if you have a new general manager or the existing general manager hits his or her head and gets some sense knocked into them and decides, oh, you know what? I could really improve my resort if my food wasn't disgusting. Because the food there is terrible. Yeah. But the walking distance to Disney Springs, how serene and peaceful those grounds are. The fact that the rooms are brand new, the options with the you have your standard your studio, your 1-2 bedroom, your 3-bedroom Grand Villa, but you also have those tree houses, and those tree houses are a game changer. That was what pushed me over the edge. I was already feeling that Saratoga was underrated. And then I stayed in one of those tree houses, and I'm like, you know what? Sorry. This is great. This is great. I own there, too. I have a contract there, too. But the nicest thing about, from a DVC owner's perspective, from a financial perspective, are the dues, which I didn't make a note of, but I'm sure Paul did. No, the dues at Saratoga are considerably lower than other DVC resorts, which makes this ideal for sleep around points because you're not going to get a crazy, what is it?
$7.33 a point.
$7.33 a point. Now, that's a little bit higher than you have at Grand Floridian, which is $681, Bay Lake Tower, $690. Grand Californian is $699 a point for dues. So it's a little bit higher, but your price per point, what are they going for on the resale market right now at Saratoga?
Well, that's always with Saratoga, is always when people ask and say, you know what, I just want points. Maybe not sleep around points, but they just want points. Saratoga always, to me, is always just the best bang for the buck that you can possibly get for three factors. It's price per point. You're talking about annual dues, like you just said, and you're also talking about deed. Because that deed is going to go till 2054. So some of the other resorts might be maybe less per point, but they expire in 2042. So when someone's talking about, oh, maybe I'll buy Old Key West, it's fine, but you're going to get 12 more years when you buy a Saratoga Springs contract, right? So 2042 versus 2054. So I think if we're looking at, the average selling price for Saratoga Springs, it's always such a great deal. And one of the best things about Saratoga, too, is always, from a DVC owner perspective, is it's the largest resort that we have, right? So availability is great, right? So if it's that kind of a last-minute trip, odds are you're probably going to be able to find a room at Saratoga Springs. So
and I would emphasize also, get into it now because, we keep saying this, and what's interesting is that average price per point. So I just pulled up the average sales prices.
I know. Did you see that for the last year?
Right?
Crazy.
So the average sales price is a blog that's tracked over on DVC Resale Market site, and basically they track the sales of all the contracts. So for comparison purposes, December of 2020, Saratoga Springs was selling on average for $109 per point. Guesses on 2021? Anyone? No? $136.
Whoa!
Right? So it's not going to be the secret that much longer. Mm-hmm. That average price, and that's still, one of the...
Shit, I better... Oh. Sorry. I was just going to say, I should... You can leave it. I was just going to say, you know what? I should... maybe I should pick up another...
contract
over there. That's okay. I don't think a lot of children are watching DVC show.
Not to toot our own horn, but we're sort of proving things in some of these categories. It's jumped above Boulder Ridge now. Boulder Ridge is now at 125 on average. Old Key West is at 126, and that's just what it is because Disney just keeps buying it back. So it's just, I feel like some people just give up on trying and move on to Saratoga or something like that. But,
where's Alani?
Alani we'll keep the same comparison going. So Alani in December of 2020 was on average $96 per point. It's now at $129 per point. So, and this is all just a reflection, in my eye of I keep going back to the idea that all these people that normally did a normal cash vacation to Walt Disney World once a year, once every 2 years, they weren't able to do that in 2020. So they got that money sitting, then add in some stimulus and all this other stuff, and DVC finally finds appealing. And that's, sales on the resale market blew up during that period of time. It was, people are running to DVC right now. So,
and, look, we're not financial experts, but you think about somebody who bought Saratoga at $98 a point, now it's
130,
pushing
136.
136. Think about that. If you bought Saratoga 3 years ago, you paid $98 a point 2 years ago. $98 a point. It's now worth $136.
Well, that's what we tell people too. It's don't buy DVC hoping you're going to, flip it and make a profit off of it. But if you're spending the money anyway, That's what we always stress to
No,
people.
you don't.
You're spending the money anyway.
You don't flip it to make a profit. You flip it to buy more points.
And I just want to give a shout out to two other examples since we've gone down this rabbit hole. Animal Kingdom Villas, I did a comparison on it actually in the December, the resale average price blog. Animal Kingdom Villas, December 2020 was selling at $115 per point. It reached an all-time high in December 2021 of $144 per point. So I then took
Give
the
me
average.
those numbers one more time.
So $115 per point in December 2020, $144 in 1 year
Almost
later.
A $30 a point increase.
Yeah, and I did the rough math. So I believe when Animal Kingdom was on sale, 160 points was the average contract number. So in 1 year alone, the value of your contract has increased by over $4,640. That's 1 year alone. Now, I've owned Animal Kingdom for 4 years. See, we've come full circle now. You can see why I was looking to flip my Animal Kingdom contract
to buy a bigger contract.
To buy a bigger, contract at Saratoga, because the value that
You can also refinance it through Monera Financial.
I literally have to just walk down my hall 2 doors to my wife's office and be like, honey, refi our contract.
Am I approved for this loan?
Yes.
Yes.
That's definitely a sentence that we never hear, is always, I'm so glad I waited to join Disney Vacation Club.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I waited. I'm so glad I waited. It's always the opposite. It's always, God, why didn't I do it sooner? My God, we looked at this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We could have bought a contract, for XXX. And man, so getting started is always the most important thing.
And just how fun this is. This is the real anomaly, because this one's just crazy hard to get into or purchase or anything like that. But Grand Californian also was one that jumped off these charts. December 2020, $224 per point was the average, which that's just mind-blowing in itself. People are paying $224 for Grand Californian. As of December 2021, it was $287. $63 per point more.
Crazy.
How
long before it breaks 300?
We've had some contracts, if they're smaller ones, like 100, maybe 50 points, 75 points, those go over $300 a point, and they sell instantly. Especially the Grand Cal, it's like a unicorn. Like a 50-point Grand Cal, if we listed that, it'd be sold within a minute. Mm-hmm. Full price.
Now, do the larger Grand Cal, do they sell?
Sure, yeah, always. It's just a different, clientele.
Market.
What I mean? You're obviously looking at if it's a 300-point Grand Cal. We sell everything from 25-point contracts to, 1,500-point contracts. So the right people are out there for every single contract there is. So,
and it gets more lucrative the more, when we talk about sleep around points, too, you've got to also consider, the more points you buy, the more lucrative it becomes, because those bigger contracts sometimes are a little bit harder to move. So the price on those is lower than the 50-point contract.
Correct.
So I just pulled up a Saratoga 500-point contract at $129 per point. So a little bit lower than what we're talking. The averages are, because you are purchasing that larger amount of points.
And then there's going to be some wiggle room on top of that too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's
a perfect contract for you.
I feel like we just convinced Pete to buy another contract. That's what I think just happened in this past.
There's some stuff going on right now. There's some stuff going on right now.
Amy just texted me, make Paul stop talking.
Well, I mean, if you people wouldn't make it so damn easy. I mean, really.
It is. A click of a button.
It really
and your life changes.
That's kind of how it's worked for the last 25 years. So, so we're all in agreement. Saratoga
always.
Your best bet for sleep around points. What's number 2?
I mean, copper is definitely getting up there. Obviously, it's a lot higher per point, but you're getting more years on it. Yeah. So I think copper is up to 2068, I think is the expiration date for copper.
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah.
So but copper is a great choice too, because again, as wonderful as the Polynesian is, and people love the Polynesian, it's great. probably the number one complaint that we do get about the Poly is that it doesn't have all the room sizes, right? So you're either going studios, which are fantastic, then you got to go to a bungalow, right? So there's no 1-bedroom or a typical 2-bedroom or maybe even a 3-bedroom. But Copper has all of those room choices too. So you got studios, 1, 2, 3-bedroom, grand villas, all those. So
cabins,
which
is the cabin, the best room on property.
Yeah. I would probably agree with that in terms of, you know, the one of the next best options. You are looking at spending considerably more buying Copper Creek, but you're getting so many more years that when you actually would do like the spreadsheet analysis and really break down the cost, like I really like it definitely could pay off, and especially if you're looking to use them as sleep around points and use them at all the other different resorts.
And for those people too, we actually have a blog that we do every single quarter. So if you even go to our website, dvcresalemarket.com, in the upper right, you can actually, in the search bar, you can just type in the word economical. And we'll do it where we break out every single resort based on dues, based on deed, based on how long the membership is. So that way you can kind of see for yourself, right? Like, which is, because at the end of the day, I always tell people, you know, don't pay for something that you're not going to use. And I say that meaning for that home resort priority window, right? Like, don't buy Copper Creek if you're never going to book there 11 months out, 10 months out, 9 months out, 8 months out. Mm-hmm. You know, buy something where if you're going to book 7 months or less, buy Saratoga Springs, because at that 7-month window, points are points, you know? Points are points.
And to your point, I just pulled up that blog so this is still from fall of 2021, but Copper Creek ranked number 1 in terms of the most economical at that time. When you're figuring
those
average
factors.
Price per point, years left on the contract, cost per point per year from the price, dues, cost per point per year, like. There's a lot of analysis going into that spreadsheet, more than my mind can handle. But Copper Creek ranked number 1. Number 2 was Polynesian. And then number 3, Saratoga Springs.
So Polynesian, more economical.
On paper, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
For dues, price. But again, it doesn't have all the room choices available. But again, if you're booking within that 7-month time frame, I just say go right to
I think people
Saratoga
love the
Springs.
Polynesian so much they overlook that.
Yeah, they're true.
They overlook the fact that it doesn't have a 1-bedroom.
No, it's my favorite. Yeah, hands down.
You know?
It's just there a couple of weeks ago. I love it.
Did you take another lamp when you were there?
The first lamp joke of 2022. Thanks, Corey.
Really? Can't have you on a show and not joke about you stealing lamps.
There was a photo somewhere of you cuddling with it on the balcony.
I did.
Yeah.
For our very passionate fan base that's out there, DVC fan, I did. I cradled my lamp on the Polynesian balcony while I watched the fireworks. So
your kids are going, Dad, you're crazy.
They literally gave me a look like, what is Dad doing? I'm like, listen, it's funny.
Mom, he's lost it.
Dad's crazy.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of our show, folks. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for being here. We will see you again next week with another episode of the DVC show. Have a great week, folks.